Hi loves, welcome to Discover You podcast. This is a community where you can show up exactly as you are, learn, grow, and discover how to stand in the power of who you want to be. I'm your host, Shar. Welcome, and let's dive in and discover you. Hello, you guys. Welcome back to this week's episode of the podcast, Discover You. Today, we're going to talk about body positivity and self-love within our own bodies. So I really wanted to dive into this topic, kind of breaking through different societal standards and different perceptions of worth in our bodies, and also like the over-glooming presence of social media. And, even before social media, there was magazines and all of these things that made us feel like we weren't adequate and we weren't worthy in our body. And I really want to talk into that space and really unpacking why there's such a body focus, also addressing the language we have with our bodies, and working through a few different things of some self-love and self-body positive things that I practice that I really want to share with you guys to kind of get you thinking about the relationship that you have with your body and the fact that we shouldn't be defined by the size of our body and what we look like. So be sure that you're following along to the podcast. Follow me over on social media. Links are down below in the show notes. And with all that said, let's dive into today's podcast episode. So when we talk about our bodies, there tends to be this perception that our value and our worth is held within our physical body and our physical appearance. So the way that we carry ourselves in the day almost seems like our value is put on like what clothes you have on your body, how thin or toned your body is, how big your boobs are, how curvaceous your body is. Like all of these things that we seem to have ingrained in our brain, that is what values or equals sexiness or attractiveness or being worthy of finding a partner or getting a job, or all of these things that we have a standard around. And I know that this is common in men and women. I think men as much as women feel the same weight. I don't know if the weight is as grave, because I think as a woman, anyone who's listening who's female can completely relate to the fact that men tend to like more youthful, younger women. And no, I'm not speaking about all men, because I know there's exceptions out there to this rule, but there tends to be a focus on image and youth and vitality, and that is jammed down our throats as women. Absolutely jammed down our throats, thrown in our face constantly. So I work with a lot of men in the industry that I currently work in, and I bring this conversation up quite often because I find it really fascinating to get a man's perspective. And the resounding answer I get all the time is that we don't have this pressure on women to look youthful. He's like, you women are the ones who put the pressure on yourselves, which I think is so fascinating, because I've always felt as a woman that there's a pressure and a weight to, look your sexiest, to not have a breakout, to not have, any weight in your midsection, or to like have, a nice round butt or boobs. Like I've always felt a pressure that I need to be worthy enough, or need to look attractive enough, or need to be pretty enough, or all of, and then that goes even further from there into like other things in relationships where you put value on your image and like, do I look like this when I'm doing this certain thing? And, it can go into so many different topics. But I find it really interesting how it's a perception that women have, I think, created for ourselves, but also we've also been exposed to this nature of like growing up and seeing models on TV and magazines and beautiful celebrities and airbrushing, and, body standards change over time. And I don't think that there's necessarily someone saying, okay, you have to look this way or you have to have this. But I think that there is a perception of what the attractive, trending body type is in a certain decade or so many 5 years to a decade, whatever it is. I think that there tends to be a perception of what is deemed more attractive or, more beautiful or whatever it might be. So a good example of that would be like when I was a teenager. So I'm 31 now. When I was a teenager, I have personally like I have some curve, but I'm very boy shaped. So I have like less curves than some women, but I'm big busted on top and smaller in the hip area. I remember back when I was a preteen and I was wearing like cute frilly skirts and like tight tank tops. And I remember like being the ideal body type because it was like I'm guessing the early 2000s, probably. No, before then. No, it was like mid 2000s because I would have been like 15 in 2005. So like let's say like early 2000s. And it was like the trending thing, like the Mandy Moores and the Paris Hiltons, like the slender, skinnier, less curvaceous women were like a very big thing. And they were so attractive and so beautiful. And everyone wanted to be thin and skinny and have like zero body fat. And so it was like, and maybe that's just my circumstance or my perception of what was happening in the world at the time, but I was like the ideal body type. So I was like, oh, and being a young preteen coming into a young woman, I was like, oh, this is great. Like I'm like what everyone's looking for. And like you put your worth on this thing, this ideal thing. And as it's evolved, so now I'm 31 and it's evolved from being like people don't want, or some people, I should say, don't want necessarily the thin, skinny, bone racky girl. They're looking for more of like the Kardashian body type. So like the really big curvaceous hips. And I think beautiful women with like big hips, like Sofia Vergara or like Shakira, J-Lo, I think those women have always been so like abundantly beautiful. And like lots of men love the big curvaceous women, the wonderful, beautiful, sexy hips because they are beautiful. So I think that's always been a thing, but it seems more that the helm has, turned where it's more like, okay, I want a woman who's like very voluptuous, who has like big on top and big down below. So I think that it's really started to shift over the last 15 years. And this is just the nature of evolution and how things change. But I don't think that it means suddenly that we're unattractive if we're slender or if we're, a different body type. So it really has started to shift. We've seen this movement with the Me Too movement and just a lot of empowerment around plus size women who are bigger body types, like the Ashley Graham model. Like there's just such a wonderful movement around women's bodies that is so needed, where we need to have this awareness around beauty at any size. And that's something that I never grew up with. I never grew up understanding that every body was beautiful. I was so stuck in this mind space of like, well, this is what the body type is, and this is what everyone needs to strive to be. And at the time, I was very lucky. I was that body type. So I never felt this like immense pressure of like, oh, I need to look a certain way to find a man or to attract a partner or whatever. So it's really interesting because my perception has always been so unique to me. And then someone else who lives in a bigger body or is more plus size or curvaceous would have felt like they were, let's use the triggering word, I apologize, the fat shaming, as I quotate my fingers. There's a lot of language around that when I remember being, a teenager and being like, oh, well, you're so thin, you don't have to worry about it. And it's like, I guess so. And like, you don't live in that experience until you're in that experience. So I remember that conversation and those words happening, but I never remember it directly feeling like my existence. And it didn't really change until, 15 years later. And I'm very happy and confident and positive in my personal body. I've worked very hard to be in the place I am with my body. Yes, I'm naturally thin, but I also have a lot of injury and a lot of chronic pain. So that's a whole nother podcast episode. But the experience for me had changed over the last 15 years because now it's become, my body type isn't not that I'm not desired or my body type isn't desired, because people do love thin women still, of course. But the perception of what Hollywood has put across, or the magazines, or the ideal sexiness in a woman has started to shift into more acceptance of plus size women, more acceptance of curvaceous women. And I think it's amazing. But now I'm kind of seeing, as I've become, an adult and now I'm in my 30s, it's like, okay, I'm not the ideal body type anymore. And now I'm seeing the other side where like there's shame on the other side too, of being like, you're too skinny and you're too bony and like you should eat a cheeseburger. And like this perpetuated language around inadequacy if you're too thin now. So it goes both sides. And to this day, there's still, even though there may be an ideal Kardashian body type, there is still shaming of plus size women and people that may carry extra weight or just might be bigger boned. The interesting thing about weight is that it's not necessarily just because you eat too many things. It can literally be your anatomy. Your body is made differently than other people's. Like, it is such a unique thing to you, and that's what's really lost in the diet culture and the body image world. So I think that what it really comes down to is shifting our focus from the image and the perception of how our body looks to really shifting the focus onto our health and focusing on how we can feel optimal and great in our body. Because if you hate yourself and you shame yourself every day for your image, for the food you eat, thinking you're not something that you are, I think there's something really wrong with that. And really, really awful that we treat ourselves this way. So I do want to add a disclaimer here that if you're struggling with disordered eating or body image stuff, it is really important to reach out to somebody and to get some support if you are needing some in this space. So remember that. The interesting thing with bodies is that there is actually 3 different body types for your anatomy. So there's an endomorph, an ectomorph, and a mesomorph. So these are anatomy structures of your bone density and how your body is actually created from your genetics and from your environment and your eating habits as a young child. So you can be born a certain body type and you may always have a struggle with weight, or you may not have a struggle at all. So it's very much dependent on the body type you have. And this is the interesting thing with body image and our body size, is that people are like, well, I want to, if you're more of a plus size woman or you're a larger boned woman or person, you may want to look like a fitness model or have a 6-pack or whatever. And it's great to have goals, but there's some reality around the fact that your body may never look like that person's. It's the same thing with a haircut. It's like you go in with a haircut and you're like, cut my hair like this. I want to look like Jennifer Aniston. And it's like your hair structure is different than Jennifer Aniston. So it might get cut exactly the same way. Does it mean it's going to fall the same way? Does it mean it's going to have the same lightness or density? Does it mean that it's going to look good with the shape of your face? Probably not. So I think that we have this perception of like we can make ourselves look like anything, but do we really want to just go down this path of always wanting to be something else that we're not? And that's where the problem lies, is that we have this desire to be and look like something else that we are not. And that's awful, because there's something really beautiful and amazing about exactly your body and the way that you look, the way that you are in your body. So many things about you are so unique and incredible and perfect to you. You don't have to look like a supermodel. You don't have to look like a bodybuilder. You don't have to look any way that doesn't feel right or work for you. So with all of that said, let's dive a little bit more into the focus on health and why truly loving our bodies comes from nourishing and loving and supporting them by, movement each day, by eating well, by drinking water, by self-caring, all of the things that we talk about, the pillars of health. Those are the things that are most important and where our focus should be on our body. And I honestly think it's something that I learned with age, where I was just like, I got more humble in my 30s or closer to my 30s. And I was like, I just don't need to have a 6-pack or get a summer bod or like have all these things. Like, and again, it's wonderful to have goals and aspirations and things that you want to do with your body, and like how you want to change or get stronger or get muscular or lose some weight or like whatever. All of these things are amazing. And like goals are so important. But looking at like what's the root of the goal, because if you truly just go into it with this physical appearance of your vanity, is it really a healthy goal for you to really just think about, I need to look a certain way so I feel good about myself? That's the real question, is what are you doing it for? What's driving the purpose? Because at the end of the day, your body's a temple. It is your one and only. And the more we can nourish it and love it and support it, the healthier and happier that relationship becomes with our body. And we start to learn to love ourselves even deeper in that process. And I know this is sounds like a lot of work and it sounds like a lot of commitment, but I think it's just starting out with the focus of health, the focus of feeling good in your body and seeing how your body responds to eating well and nourishing it, to moving, to sleeping a lot at night, to, crying if you need to cry, or having self-care time, like doing all of these pillars to really feel your best. Let's talk a little bit about the language we have with our bodies, the conversations we have with ourselves in front of the mirror or when we wake up in the morning. The mind space around the physical appearance. So I think we're all guilty and all victim to getting up in the morning, looking in the mirror and thinking, oh God, look at that zit, I'm so ugly. Or, grabbing your belly and going, oh my God, I don't look any skinnier. Or looking at your butt and thinking, oh, it's so big, or my thighs touch, or whatever it might be, whatever your conversation with yourself is. Do you have those conversations? Do you have them almost on a daily basis where you shame or hate yourself for your physical appearance? And the way we speak to our bodies is so important. Our body does so much for us. When you really break it down back to the basic mechanics and the science of in our bodies, our body is doing 1,000,001 things a minute, a millisecond, pumping our blood through our body, getting everything through our body, oxygen, our brain function, our nerve endings, our feelings, our emotions, our thoughts, our movement, everything is happening faster than you can ever imagine. And yet we are sitting here shaming our image, shaming our breasts, our butt, our belly, our thighs, our face, our nose, our hair, every part of us. We sit here and poke at and prod at and destroy our worth because we think that it's inadequate. It's not good enough. And it's crazy to think that we wake up every day and instead of thinking, I'm healthy, I'm amazing, and I look fucking awesome, we think, this sucks and I hate this and I wish this was bigger, or I wish this was smaller, or I wish this looked different. So sit with that for a second. Do you guys do that? I know I do it. And it's a long journey and dedication to start to change that language, start to change the conversation you have with yourself. I think that we all have insecurities and we all have fear within our body of inadequacy or not being valued enough or not being good enough for something or someone. And there's something that's really messed up with that we can stand there and hate ourselves. You would never stand in front of your best friend and be like, your gut's too big, or your thighs touch, or you're kind of not that pretty. You would never say those things to another human being. So why are we saying them to ourselves? Why are we destroying our worth in front of a mirror when in fact we should be standing there and being like, I'm fucking awesome. I am beautiful. I am amazing. And the mirror challenge, I like to call it, or mirror talk, whatever you want to phrase it as, is something that I really want to share with you guys and talk about, because this is something that I started doing probably about 5-10 years ago, which really started to change the language around my body. And honestly, this is a constant work in progress, and it never stops. The work never stops. And it's really important to remember that you go through moments in life where you have those thoughts and you think those things and they come back, or something else forms or a new thing forms because you hear another societal standard or you see another beauty trend and you think, oh my God, I'm just not this or I'm not that. So I call it the mirror talk. And what this is when I am in front of the mirror and I see something and then I say something or have a thought about my body, negative thought about my body, I catch the thought, I become aware of the thought, and then I change the thought. So I oftentimes would say that my weak spot in the area that I tend to pick apart or sabotage or think not worthy of is my stomach. And I always had this obsession with one day I'll have a six pack and it'll be chiseled and defined and there'll be lines and blah, 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 all of that stuff. And sure, I'd still love to have a six pack, but I reached a point in my late 20s where I was like, mentally it's not safe for me to obsessively work out because working out turns into obsession for me personally. And I also realized that for me hormonally, my body fluctuates a lot. My body is very sensitive to hormone changes. I bloat very easily. So I came to a place where I was like, I don't need a six pack to feel worthy, to feel attractive. I need to step into honoring how my belly changes from week to week because of my cycle. And that's okay. So my area that I always work on is my, that little, I call it the bloop, the little bit between your belly button and your pubic line. And by no means do I have any weight to lose or need to change anything with my body, but I've always had this idea of like, oh, it needs to be flat and I shouldn't be bloated and I shouldn't be this or that. And as I've worked on my mirror talk, I catch myself in the moment and I go, no. I'm like, okay, I'm ovulating this week, or my period is due next week, or I ate something really salty and I'm bloated, or, I haven't been to the bathroom, or like whatever it might be. And there might not be a reason. But what I do is I hold that space, I hold that part of my body, and I take a deep breath, breathe in, breathe out. And I say, okay, this is my belly. It doesn't need to be anything different than what it is. I am just going to honor and accept what it looks like right now and not have judgment or try to think I need to change it in some way. And then I take another breath and exhale. And I just let that all go. And I start to change the thought. So I catch myself. I start to change the thought after releasing that breath, and I still continue to hold my belly, and then I say, okay, well, what can I focus on that is positive with my body, that I love about my body? Because I might not love this part right now. This is the work, right? But I move my eyes to a different spot and go, my boobs look really awesome today, or my skin looks really great, or my hair looks really great. So I move the language to a different part of my body that I love, that I want to focus on, that I really think is amazing, because there's always parts of our bodies that we love and parts that we don't love. So moving that energy to a space where you're like, okay, I love this part and I'm going to focus on this part. So that way I can come back to the other part and focus on that later when I'm ready to. So that is what I call mirror talk, standing in front of the mirror every day, because we all do, and looking at our body and finding something we love instead of finding the things that we don't love, or the things that we don't love right now. I think it's really important, especially like as a form of gratitude too, right? You're standing there thinking, okay, I love this about me, and this is great about me, or this is beautiful about me. So really finding endearing qualities within yourself will really start to grow and blossom that self-worth of finding love and value for the body that you live in, because there is something beautiful and amazing about your body, many things. We just need to start to focus on them, start to shift our mind around what that thing is that is beautiful. And then as we start to find one beautiful thing, the rest start to blossom. So I really challenge you guys to start to think about that stuff and maybe try the mirror talk challenge and just start to, look and be like, what is it that I like? I truly believe that there's an energy around what you say to yourself and the language you have with yourself, with your body, with every part of your life. So if we can start to add some beautiful energy to something, then why wouldn't we try, right? The same thing happened for me with my skincare. I've always been very self-conscious of my skin on my face and just having this idea of like I need to have perfect skin and have no blemishes. So I started to kind of fall in love with my skincare routine, where I wake up every day and I cleanse my face and do my beauty care routine and all of that. And I really try to like love my skin while I take care of it, whether there's a zit or not, or whether there's a blemish or whatever or not. Like I really try to just like give it so much love. And it may sound silly, but like over the past few months I've been doing this and I feel so beautiful in my skin because I'm taking the time to love it, to appreciate it, to find gratitude for it, to like have an idea of like when I'm doing it, when I'm washing my face and moisturizing my face, I'm like, okay, I'm giving it what it needs. I'm like healing it, I'm moisturizing it, I'm anti-aging it, whatever the conversation is in the moment. It's like feeling really grateful for the moment I have while I do that. So that's a little tidbit I have around, a few of my things. And I think that we'll finish off lastly with the conversation of understanding that we are not defined by our size and the body that we live in. We do not have to fit a standard. We do not have to fit a mold of what beautiful or sexy or attractive might be. We literally have all of the power and the amazingness within us to feel sexy, to feel confident, to feel in love with the body that we have, that we exist in. Because we all have something to bring to the table. We all have a beautiful essence that someone else gets to see and experience as well. But the true reward that comes from all of this is that you have a deepened love and rooted appreciation for your body and for living in it every single day. Because why do we want to wake up and hate ourselves? When you're so amazing, you have something so incredible to share with the world, to show the world. And not all of that value is held in your body, but your love for yourself is. So I hope that this topic is helpful to you guys. And I hope that you can find a little bit more empowerment and love and kindness to your body because it does so much for you. And there's nothing better than finding ways to honor it and to love it, even more than you might be doing right now. So with that all said, you guys, I'm going to end the episode of the podcast here. Be sure to follow along the podcast wherever you're listening. Share it with anybody who you think might need this today, need to hear these words. And also be sure to follow me over on social media, Instagram, YouTube. All of the things are linked down below in the show notes. And of course, hit me up on my email if you guys want to reach out, send me any reviews. I'd love to have you review the podcast. And of course, have an amazing, amazing day, you guys. And I will see you in next week's episode. Bye, guys.